Section 19 of Little Journeys to the Homes of English Authors. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Jennifer Beckett Wood. Little Journeys to the Homes of English Authors by Elbert Hubbard. Benjamin Disraeli, Part 2. With Disraeli, defeat merely meant a transient episode, not a conclusion. On the second venture he was elected, and one sunshiny day found himself duly sworn in as a member of the House of Commons, with a seat just back of Peel's. There is a tradition in Parliament, adopted also in the United States Senate, that silence is quite becoming to a member during his first session. Disraeli had a motto to the effect that it is better to be impudent than servile, and in order to teach Parliament that in the presence of personality all rules are waived, he very shortly indulged him in an exceeding spread-eagle speech. But he had not spoken 5 minutes before the members began to laugh. Catcalls, hisses, and mad tumult reigned. The young man in the flaming waistcoat let loose all his oratorical artillery, and the result was bravos and left-handed applause that smothered his batteries. Again and again he tried to proceed, but his voice was lost in the Clover Club fusillade. The chair was powerless. At last the speaker saw an opening and roared above the din, "I will now sit down, but you shall yet listen to me." Opinions were divided as to whether the House had squelched the Israelitish fop, or whether the fop had tantalized the House into unseemliness. The young man needed snubbing, no doubt, but the lesson had been given so brutally that sympathy was with the snubbed. The original intent was to abash him so he would break down, but this not succeeding, he had simply been clubbed into silence. Then, when Disraeli refused to accept condolences, merely waiving the whole affair, and a few days after arose to make some trivial motion, just as though nothing had happened, he made friends. Any man who shows himself to be strong has friends. People wish to attach themselves to such a one. Disraeli showed himself strong in that he held no resentment and indulged in no recrimination on account of the treatment he had received. A weak man would have done one of these things, resigned his seat, demanded an apology from the House, or refused to let his voice again be heard. Disraeli did neither. He continued to speak on various occasions, and expressed himself so courteously, so modestly, so becomingly, that the members listened in awe and curiosity. Then soon it was discovered that beneath the mild and gentle ripple of his speech ran a deep current of earnest truth, tinged with subtle wit. When he spoke, the loungers came in from the cloakrooms, fearing to miss something that was worth while. The House of Commons experience taught Disraeli one great truth, and that was this: the most effective oratory is not bombastic. Among educated people, or illiterate, the quiet, deliberate, and subdued manner is best. Reserve is a very necessary element in effective speaking. It is soul weight that counts, not mere words, words, words. The extreme deliberation and compelling quality of quiet self-possession in Disraeli's style dated, according to Gladstone, from the day that Parliament tried to laugh him down. After that, if anyone wanted to hear him, they had to come to him, and he took good care that those who did come did not go away empty. He never explained the evident, illustrated the obvious, nor expatiated on the irrelevant. However, the motto, impudence rather than servility, was not discarded. Instead of a dashing style, he developed a slow, subtle, scathing quality that was quite lost on all, save those who gave themselves to close listening. And the House listened, for when Disraeli went after an antagonist, he chose an antlered stag. If little men, fiercely effervescent and childishly inconsequential, attempted to reply to him or sought to engage him in debate, he simply answered them with silence or that tantalizing smile. O'Connell and Disraeli, although unlike, had much in common and should have been fast friends. Surely the age and distinguished record of O'Connell must have commanded Disraeli's respect, but we know how they grappled in wordy warfare. Disraeli called the Irishman an incendiary, and O'Connell, who was a past master in abuse, replied in a speech wherein he exhausted the Billingsgate lexicon. He wound up by a reference to the ancestry of his opponent, and a suggestion that this renegade Jew is descended from the impenitent thief whose name was doubtless Disraeli. It was a home thrust, a picture so exaggerated and overdrawn that all England laughed. The very extravagance of the simile should have saved the allusion from resentment, but it touched Disraeli in his most sensitive spot, his pride of birth. He straightway challenged his traducer. O'Connell had killed a man in a duel years before, and then vowed he would never again engage in mortal combat. Disraeli intimated that he would fight O'Connell's son Morgan, if preferred, a man of his own age. Morgan replied that his father insulted so many men he could not set the precedent of fighting them all, or standing sponsor for an indiscreet parent. But with genuine Irish spirit, he suggested that if the son of Abraham was intent on fight and could not be persuaded to be sensible, why, the matter could probably be arranged. Happily, about this time, police officers invaded the apartments of Disraeli and arrested him on a bench warrant. He was bound over, to his great relief, in the sum of £500 to keep the peace. O'Connell never took the matter very seriously, and referred soon after in a speech to "my excellent, though slightly bellicose friend, child of an honoured race." Disraeli did not take up politics to make money. The man who does that may win in his desires, but his career is short. Nothing but honesty really succeeds. Disraeli knew this, and in his record there is no taint. But the income of a member of the House of Commons affords no opportunity for display. Disraeli's books brought him in only small sums, and his father's moderate fortune had been sadly drawn upon. He was well past 30 and was not making head, simply because he was cramped for funds. To rise in politics, you must have an establishment, you must entertain and reach out, and bring those you wish to influence within your scope. A third floor back in an ebb-tide street will not do. Like Agassiz, Disraeli had no time to make money. It was a sad plight. But this was a man of destiny, and to use the language of Augustine Birrell, Wyndham Lewis at this time accommodatingly died. Mrs. Wyndham Lewis had been the firm friend and helper of Disraeli for many years, and although a small matter of 15 years separated them as to ages, yet their hearts beat as one. Scarce a 12-month had gone before the widow and Disraeli were married. They disappeared from London for some months, journeying on the continent. When they returned, all the old scores in way of unpaid bills against Disraeli were paid, and he was master of an establishment. Disraeli was 35, his wife was 50, but it was a happy mating. They thought alike, and their ambitions were the same. Disraeli treated his wife with all the courtly grace and deference in which he was an adept, and her princely fortune was absolutely his. "There was much cause for gratitude on both sides," said O'Connell, and there is no doubt that Disraeli's wife proved the firmest friend he ever had. For many years she was his sole confidant and best adviser. She attended him everywhere and relieved him of many burdens. That true incident of her fingers being crushed by the careless slamming of the carriage door, and her hiding the bleeding members in her muff, and attending her husband to the House of Commons, where he was to speak, refusing to disturb him by her pain, this symbols the moral quality of the woman. She was the fit mate of a great man, and it is pleasant to know that she was honoured and appreciated. To tell the story of Disraeli's 30 years in Parliament would be to write the political history of the time. He was in the front of every fight. He expressed himself on every subject. He crossed swords with the strongest men of his age. That he had no great and overpowering convictions on any subject is fully admitted now, even by his most ardent admirers. It was always a question of policy. That is to say, he was a politician. He gave a point here and there when he had to, and when he did, always managed to do it gracefully. When he ambled over from one party to another, he affected a fine wrath and gave excellent reasons. 3 times he was Chancellor of the Exchequer, and twice was he Prime Minister, and for a time actual dictator. But he took good care not to exercise his power too severely. When his word was supreme, the safety of the nation lay, as it always does, in a strong opposition. In one notable instance was Disraeli wrong in his prophecies. He declared again and again that free trade meant commercial bankruptcy. Yet free trade came about, and the fires were started in 10,000 factories, and such prosperity came to England as she had never known before. Political economy as a science was a constant butt for his wit, and in physical science he was dense to a point where his ignorance calls for pity. He believed in the literal Mosaic account of creation, and said in his paradoxical way on one occasion that in belief he was not only a Christian but a Jew, and this in spite of his most famous mot, "All sensible men are of one religion." And what is that? Sensible men never tell. Had Disraeli been truly sensible, he would not have attempted to hold Charles Darwin up to ridicule by declaring in a speech at Oxford that "it is a choice between apes and angels." He had neither the ability, patience, nor inclination to read The Origin of Species, and yet was so absurd as to answer it. In his novels of Coningsby, Sybil, and Tancred, he argues with great skill and adroit sophistry that a landed aristocracy is necessary to a progressive civilization. The common people need an example of refinement in way of manners, art, and intellect. Someone must take the lead and reveal the possibility of life in leisurely and luxurious living. And this example of beauty, gentleness, and excellence was to come from the landed gentry of England? Ich Gott! Was it possible that this man believed in the necessity of the gentry as a virtuous example? Or did he merely view the fact that the aristocracy were there in actual possession, and as they could not be evicted, why then the next best thing was to cajole, flatter, and discreetly advise them? Who shall say what this man believed? Sensible men never tell. But this we know, this man had no vice but ambition. He conformed pretty closely to England's ideals, and his thirst for power never caused him to take the chances of a Waterloo. His novels showed a close acquaintanceship with the ways of society, and he knew the human heart as few men ever do. The degradation of the average toiler in Great Britain, the infamy of the policy extended toward Ireland, and the cruelty of imperialism, all these he knew, for his books reveal it, but he was powerless as a leader to stem the current of tendency. He acquiesced where he deemed action futile. Lothair is his best novel, for in it he gets furthest away from himself. It reveals a cleverness that is admirable, and this same brilliancy and shifty play of intellect are found in Endymion, written in his 75th year. Whether these novels can ever take their place among the books that endure is a question that is growing more easy to answer each succeeding year. They owed their popularity more to their flippant cleverness than to their insight, and their vogue was due, to a great extent, to the veiled personalities that interline their pages. That Disraeli did not carry out all the plans and reforms he attempted need not be set down to his discredit. It is fortunate he did not succeed better than he did. He, however, safely piloted the great ship in the direction the passengers desired to go, and his own personal ambition was reached when he, a Jew at heart, member of a despised race, had made himself master of the fleets, armies, and treasury of the proudest nation the world has ever known. Bound into the life of Disraeli is a peculiar incident in the romantic friendship that existed between him and Mrs. Williams of Torquay, Cornwall. About the year 1849, Disraeli began to receive letters from an unknown admirer, who expressed a great desire for an interview on a most important business. All public men, especially if they have the brilliant mental qualities of Disraeli, receive such letters. The sensitive neurotic female who is ill appreciated in her own home, and whose soul yearns for a higher companionship, is numerous. Disraeli's secretary used to take care of such letters, with a gentle explanation that the chief was out of town, but upon his return, etc., etc., and that was the last of it. But this Torquay correspondent was insistent, and finally a letter came from her saying that she had come to London on purpose to meet her lord and master, and she would await him at a seat just east of the fountain in Crystal Palace at a certain hour. Disraeli read the missive with impatience. The idea of his meeting an unknown woman in this fishmonger manner at a hurdy-gurdy show. He tossed the letter into the fire. The next day another letter came, expressing much regret that he had not kept the appointment, but saying she would await him at the same place the following day, and begging him, as the matter was very urgent, not to fail her. Disraeli smiled and showed the letter to his wife. She advised him to go. When his wife said he had better do a thing, he usually did it, and so he ordered his carriage and went to the hurdy-gurdy show to meet the impressionable female of unknown age and condition at the seat just east of the fountain. It was a silly thing for the leading member of Parliament to do, to make an assignation in a public place with a fool woman. All London might be laughing at him tomorrow. He was on the point of turning back. But he reached the fountain, and there was his destiny awaiting him, a little woman in widow's black. She lifted her veil and showed a face wrinkled and old, but kindly. She was agitated. She really did not expect him, and the great man gave a great sigh of relief when he saw that no flashily dressed creature had entrapped him. Even if people stared at him sitting there, it made no difference. In pity he shook hands with the little old woman, sat down beside her, calmed her agitation, spoke of Cornwall and the weather, and inquired what he could do for her. A rambling talk about nothing followed, and Disraeli was sure it was just a mild case of lunacy. He arose to go, and the woman gave him an envelope, saying she had written out her case and begged him to read the letter when he had time. The man was preoccupied, his mind on great affairs of state. He simply crushed the letter into the side pocket of his overcoat, bade the woman a dignified good morning, and turned away. It was a month before he found the letter, all crumpled and soiled, there where he had placed it. He really had forgotten where it came from. The envelope was opened, and out dropped a Bank of England note for £1,000. This note was to pay for certain legal advice. The advice wanted was of a trivial nature, and Disraeli, always conscientious in money matters, hastened to return the money in person and give the advice gratis. But the lady had had the interview, 2 of them, and this was all she wanted. Letters followed, and this developed into a daily correspondence, wherein the old lady revealed the story of her passion, a passion as delicate, earnest, and all-devouring as ever a girl of 20 knew. Insane, you say? Well, Yes, doubtless. But then, love is illusion. Perhaps life is illusion, a very beautiful rainbow. And why old folks should not be allowed to chase it, or allow sweet emotion to gurgle gleefully under their lee a bit, as well as young folks, I do not know. Then, really, is love simply a physical manifestation, and do spirits grow old? If so, where is our belief in the immortality of the soul? Mrs. Williams was childless, had long been a widow, was rich, and her heart had been in the grave until she began to trace the record of Disraeli. She was a recluse, read, studied, fed on Disraeli, loved him. After several years of dreaming and planning, she had actually bagged the game. She was a woman of education and ideas. Her letters were interesting, and Disraeli's letters to her, now published, reveal the history of his daily life as he never told it to another. At her death, the bulk of Mrs. Williams' fortune went by will to Disraeli. But Mrs. Disraeli was not jealous of this affection. Why should a woman of 60 be jealous of another woman the same age? They pooled their love and grew rich together in recounting it. Presents were going backward and forward all the time between Disraeli's country home and Torquay. Mrs. Williams next came to live at Hughenden. There she died, and there she sleeps, side by side, as was her wish, with Benjamin Disraeli, Lord Privy Seal, Earl Beaconsfield of Beaconsfield, Viscount Hughenden of Hughenden. And the reason the ex-premier was not buried in Westminster Abbey was because he had promised these two women that even death should not separate them from him. So there, under the spreading elms, in this out-of-the-way country place, they rest, these three, side by side, and the sighing breeze tells and tells again to the twittering birds in the branches of this triple love, strange as fate, strong as destiny, warm as life, pure as snow, and unselfish as the kiss of the summer sun. End of section 19. End of Little Journeys to the Homes of English Authors by Elbert Hubbard.